Hello people, cheers from my non-alcoholic beer. It's time for another video. It's time to chat about movies. I have come here to seek solace in the cool darkness of my cinema room because other people in the UK are probably already aware that it's absolutely boiling outside. It's like melting temperatures. I'm Scottish. Last time something was this hot around me, I'd been placed in an oven by a witch after trying to eat her candy house. Not a euphemism. So it's very uncomfortable for me. I prefer the darkness and the cold. It reminds me of my soul. Summer brings the sweltering heat, all the flies that are really annoying, bigger spiders because they're out feasting on the flies. The other day at work we had wood wasps, absolute nightmare fuel. I mentioned them on the podcast, but just for context, think of what looks like a wasp but about 3 times the size. Found out later they tend not to sting, or they don't sting. I'm saying tend not to sting. Didn't comfort me at the time. My work colleague and I basically hugged ourselves for a while after we'd used a spare can of Lynx and a lighter to set fire to the demon beastie. Anyway, I didn't have much post this week. I don't think I had anything. There weren't any new movies to a great degree that I hadn't spoken about elsewhere. Much. Main one was Black Widow, which we discuss on the podcast this week. I wasn't a big fan. I think it's another disappointing treatment of that character, which is a shame. But I won't go over what I said on the podcast again. So what sprung to mind was a couple of things, a couple of online conversations. People have been getting to access film festivals again in person. Cannes going on, so there's a lot of good stuff to look forward to, apparently, including I'm hearing good things about Titan, I think, from the woman who directed Raw. Sounds very Cronenbergian, sounds very interesting and twisted. That's definitely going on my list. The French Dispatch by Wes Anderson sounds very Wes Anderson-y, and we know that that can probably make Tyler cry, so that could be going on the list. And separate from the festival chat, I think a lot of people have been pleasantly surprised by how good a film called Pig is. Pig stars Nicolas Cage, and people have been like, oh wow, Nicolas Cage is really good in this. Nicolas Cage has always been good. It's just up to everyone else to decide if they want to be on Nicolas Cage's level. That's just how it is. I'm sorry. I know that he's become a bit of a punchline, and I think it's really unfair. We often mention on the podcast how we don't begrudge anyone cashing checks. We've discussed films with Eric Roberts, who at this point on his IMDb probably has about 1,500 credits. That's hyperbolic, but it's maybe even not that far off. Cage is another one, and we know the reasons for him picking a lot of the movies that he's done, but he turns up and he always delivers. I have never watched anything that I've really disliked Nicolas Cage in, ever. I can't think. There's some biggies that I've missed. I've still not watched Vampire's Kiss, but he decides on how he wants to approach a character. I'm guessing obviously the script and director will help with that input, and he goes along with that. He's a lot of fun in the standard action films. The Rock holds up as a belter. Con Air is great, especially for the put the bunny back in the box moment. Even Gone in 60 Seconds holds up as a lot more fun than I remember. Then The national security movies are a lot of fun. He's great in those kinds of roles. He was actually superb in Leaving Las Vegas, which is no pun intended, a sobering reminder, really, of how someone in the grip of addiction can only really be helped if they want help. And Cage was playing someone who really didn't want to be helped. It's a great performance. I think he deserved the praise for that performance. Then you've got Lord of War, which is a great one. Wild at Heart with Lynch. Joe was fantastic. Obviously, people have gone about Mandy and The Colour of Space. They are both very good, and he's very good in them. But it's worth taking the time to try and find the better films in his filmography. Even if there's a month where he releases 5, you will usually find at least one of those being good. You know, the reworked Bad Lieutenant movie was superb, and I don't think anybody really thought that was going to be worthwhile when that started. And down here, Matchstick Men. Matchstick Men is one of the best Nick Cage movies. I just think it's brilliant. This was released when I was working at Blockbuster at the time, so sometimes people come up to the counter, have you got something you could recommend? Well, I was like, Matchstick Men. Most of the time, but Nicolas Cage. And I said, I know what you mean. I know, and it can be a bit quirky and use the tics. Matchstick Men actually uses that kind of performance style really well. He has OCD, has some tics and twitches. I know that people might think it's too much of a caricature, or maybe they'll find it insulting for his portrayal of how people could be afflicted. I just think it was Nicolas Cage playing an OCD version of Nicolas Cage, which worked for me. Sam Rockwell is in this as well. It's very good. Bruce McGill has a small part, I think, and Alison Lohman, who has done a few other movies, but I don't think I've seen her be as good in anything as she was this. Matchstick Men is high recommend. Don't worry, it landed on a cushion. But in general, I would recommend checking out everything that Nicolas Cage does. Okay, maybe not everything, but giving it a chance. Willy's Wonderland was another really enjoyable Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff. If you double bill that with the Banana Splits movie, you're in for a great time. Cargo, I think it was called. Whatever the title, the one where there's a boat full of animal predators and they're being released by people for a certain reason, and Cage is the person on the boat who can best deal with them. It's not as great as that premise sounds, and I was very excited for it, but it's still all right. And I think that Nicolas Cage always knows what he's aiming for. I was reminded lately of the great sketch he did sitting alongside Andy Samberg, being Nicolas Cage. Maybe I'm being optimistic, but I like to think that he's often in on the joke. He knows what he can bring to a project, and he knows what he can bring to a project when it requires acting and not just Nicolas Cage acting. So I see there's a groundswell of support from people who have pretty much said the same thing, which is basically Nicolas Cage has always been great, and it's up to everyone else to catch up. So this video this week is a tribute to Nicolas Cage, because I think he's superb. I think it is easy to point and laugh at some of the films he's picked, but don't forget that he still has the ability to be great, and has still done that even in films you probably wouldn't want to pick up to watch. So this might be a really, really long way of saying don't judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a Nick Cage film by its poster, maybe. Some of the worst ones do have the worst posters. I don't know. But anyway, you should always allow yourself the opportunity to uncage the cage.